This presentation is going to take about 45 minutes. Don't worry, it's not definitely a PowerPoint or anything like that. And if there are any questions, please feel free to use the messaging function, and I'll cover those off towards the end of it. So let's begin. So we're going to be covering three main areas in the presentation today. Why do anything and why now? What are the threats, the impacts to you, and also what are your options in helping you address information and data security and privacy as well? And then how can CCS actually help you in improving how you manage information, data, and privacy security? Excuse me. So let's come in. So one of the main things is sort of why do anything? All organizations depend absolutely on information, data, and privacy. Like when I first started in industry, our idea of protecting data was making sure filing cabinets were locked and making sure that nobody had access to the office to look over some of the designs that I was doing. I was actually, believe it or not, a piano designer was my very first sort of job way back when, designing for people like Steinway and Bosendorfer, etc. But our idea of, like I said, protecting the information and data was just making sure the office was locked. But with the way businesses work today with the extended ecosystems, there are lots of different threats and challenges to looking after information, data, and privacy. We work in extended supply chain. As a business myself, we rely on third-party suppliers for some of our technology solutions or some of our consultancies. We also use cloud services. So knowing that my information and data is out there in a cloud, I need to ensure that it is protected at all times. Businesses now are relying more and more on managed services from organizations, as well as outsourcing those. But as we all know, attacks are increasing. The number of attacks that are actually coming out, ransomware attacks, phishing attacks, other forms of attacks on businesses, means that the threat to it is becoming more and more. Cyber attacks are everywhere. I get news notifications 10, 20, 30, even 50 a day on different forms of attacks that are happening out there in the marketplace. And I'll cover off some of the recent attacks and some of the more high profile attacks a little bit later on. But also third parties of ours are being attacked as well. We're seeing a significant rise in the attacks on smaller third-party suppliers to try and get access to larger corporations' information and data. But also other areas that need to be addressed around information, data, and privacy is around things like compliance to things like GDPR. But also our customers and suppliers are also requesting more governance, more compliance with information and data security from us as a business. If you've ever worked with trying to win bids for large contracts with different types of suppliers, you're often asked around, what are your policies and procedures for looking after information and data and also privacy? But it's also about getting best business practices. But the main reason of why do anything, if your information and data and privacy is threatened, compromised, or you just can't get access to it, the impact can be huge. But what are the actual sort of challenges and threats out there that businesses are facing? It's not just the hackers that I mentioned before and ransomware attacks and IT security. There are both direct and indirect threats that a business faces. It might be as simple as that you have out-of-date information security or privacy management policies and procedures in place. The security might not be as tight as it should be around access control. And that access control might not necessarily just be having the right people have access to the right information at the right time electronically. It might be access into your actual building or into data centers, or how access of any type of information. It's not just electronic, it could be paper-based as well. It might be just poor physical security as a direct threat around looking after information and data. But also there may be different ways of how you communicate data within the organization and also externally. And obviously with what's happened over the previous couple of years, with more and more people working from home, the communication strategy and how businesses deal with information and security for home workers has also changed. But there's also indirect threats as well, targeting businesses. And that might be system changes, bringing in new forms of technology, using digital transformation, bringing in new systems and new environments. And how is that actually measured? What relationships you have with your suppliers and what information you actually share with them, and what can and cannot they do with that particular piece of information. Or how your business has just evolved over the last sort of couple of years with operational changes and how that's actually managed. But also new opportunities, moving into new markets, new areas that require extra levels of diligence and governance around that. And there are lots and lots of different challenges and threats, but it's not just hackers, sat in a darkened room, typing away, trying to get into your environment. And it's not just IT security. There are lots of different threats out there, both direct and also indirect. And the impact to businesses can be absolutely huge. Now, 67% of CIOs think it's a given that their company or organization will have some form of data breach or cyber attack every year. And it does take an average of 6 to 9 months for even a business to discover that a data breach has happened in the first place. And 46% of all UK businesses will experience at least one attack against their information and data in this year, which are some huge figures. Now, looking at some of these fines and breaches of data and information security and privacy that these particular organizations have highlighted, and there are many, many more of these organizations out there that have been impacted by either an information or security leak or a GDPR breach and have had fines. Now, British Airways' original fine was going to be about circa 180 million, but it was actually reduced to 20 million. But over 400,000 people were affected by this, and they've got to now pay them compensation. And that compensation figure could be up to 800 million. So the financial impact can be huge. And if you look at the others, with Marriott, Equifax, Dixon Carr, I won't go through them all, but each one has had some form of information, data, or privacy breach and has had financial penalties because of it. But what they all have in common is not that they've just had a breach of some kind or have managed to share private information that they shouldn't have done or breach GDPR guidelines. It's the fact they've all had damage to their reputation, their brand, confidence from their stakeholders in their business. And the fines, yes, their monetary value and the nice headlines that people put out there, but it's all the additional costs around there that for the remediation of the leaks, for the potential loss of business, customers moving away, not winning new contracts, etc. So the impact can be absolutely huge for organizations. But there are options out there. Obviously, at the very beginning, I spoke around how we're going to be talking around ISO 27701 for information and data security and ISO 27701 for privacy information management. But there are other options out there for organizations. You may already have an information security management system or a privacy information management system in place. But is it an informal system? Is it basic system? Or is it just ad hoc that you have some policies and procedures in place that say, yeah, we'll look after people's data, we will manage their information, we'll make sure it doesn't get breached, etc. But what it needs to be is a framework to enable you as an organization to identify what your assets actually are and understand where the information and where the data and the personal identifiable information is secured. But then also you need to look at what the threats are and determine what they are, whether they're internal threats, external, direct threats, indirect threats, but trying to determine what they are and have processes and procedures in place for it. And then you need to look at and try and assess what the vulnerabilities of that getting access to that information and data are. But what you need to do then really is look for the relevant controls within the two ISO standards of 27001 and 27701. Obviously, there are other areas around information and data security and security in general, such as things like Cyber Essentials. And Cyber Essentials is a great way of having a self-assessment model, and it's really aimed at small to medium businesses when they tender for UK government or public sector contracts. But it's not a management system. Yes, it will give you assurances, but it's not a full-blown management system that will help you develop and grow your business, but also at the same simultaneous time protecting the information, data and privacy of your customers, suppliers, or any other interested parties within your business. So Cyber Essentials is one way of doing it. You could go for Cyber Essentials Plus, which will look after the information and data and give you that independent review of your environment, of your security policies, your security processes. But it's not really about looking after the whole package of the information, data and privacy combined. And again, it's not a management system, and it has limited recognition outside of the UK. Now, the two main standards that I'll be covering today are around ISO 27001, which focuses on the information and data security, whereas ISO 27701 addresses the protection of that personal identifiable information, or PII. But if you combine these two standards together, you can make sure as an organization you can protect the confidentiality, integrity and availability of that information and data. So what I want to do now is just quickly drill down into each one of the standards. So ISO 27001, which I would imagine the vast majority of you heard, some of you may have already implemented that and be gaining the benefits associated with protecting the confidentiality, integrity and availability of the data. But it's made up of 114 different controls in 14 different areas, but only 37% actually relate to IT. It also looks at the organizational and how you actually manage information and data from an organizational point of view. It looks at the people. Do the people know that the employees know how to handle personal identifiable information, how they protect information and data, how they can and cannot share information there. But it also looks at the physical aspects of information and data security, access into the data centers if you're using cloud-based services, or your co-location or managed hosting, or whichever element of third-party data, or physical access into your own environment. But it also looks at the technological areas of a business as well. What is the communication security, the HR security? How do you handle supplier relationships and how you actually deal with them? Might be down to cryptography, or how you handle a simple thing like an information security incident. What is the process and procedures that as a business that is the best practices for you to go through to minimize the risk and the impact if you were unlucky enough to have some form of information, data or privacy breach within the organization? And ISO 27001, it simply provides a framework to make sure that you can protect the assets that are important to you as a business, that they're not compromised. But there's lots of value to be gained from implementing a framework like ISO 27001 for information and data security. Yes, it's about protecting your data, your customers, information, data, any other interested stakeholders. But it's also about improving how you run as a business and giving you a competitive edge against your competitors. It will help that building of trust with your stakeholders, whether that stakeholders are your customers or investors or business partners or any suppliers. It's giving them the confidence that you will look after any information and data, excuse me, that you happen to hold on that organization. But ISO 27001 is also about a continually improvement. It's very much a system, the way it's monitoring and an environment to enable you to continually improve how you manage it. It's not a static system that you'll just do once and forget about. It's about keeping that system going and making sure that you're getting the best use out of the processes and procedures that ultimately protect the information and data security of your organization. It will also help you identify any potential areas of loss. What is the impact to you as a business? How are you going to be affected? How do you remediate against that? But I think that probably one of the most important things is it gives that actual demonstration that has been independently verified that you will look after information and data security, and you have the correct processes, policies and procedures in place to do that and to deliver that to your customers. So if we just go on to 27701 for privacy information management. Now, privacy information management is not as widely known standard as the ISO 27001, but it covers all the methods that any company has for collecting, processing, storing, or even destroying personal identifiable information. Now, PII information is traditionally thought as just a name, address, date of birth of an individual, but it also can mean electronic identifiers such as IP address, geolocation, location tags, ID numbers, etc. Now, ISO 27000 or 27701, sorry, was released back in Q3 of 2019, and it's an international standard around an approach to privacy protection, and it is a component of information security and sits alongside and up with ISO 27001. Now, you can't just implement privacy information management, you will need to have ISO 27001 in place as well, and you could almost judge 27701 for privacy as a bolt-on to that to enhance the management of it. And it really helps you build a guide for how you should manage how you should manage the privacy of data, and brings the best practices around policies and procedures that businesses should have in place, you know, to comply with things like GDPR or other privacy regulations and laws. You know, and it lays out a detailed set of checklists that enable you to establish a framework and to maintain the privacy and protection of any personal identifiable information, and improve the way you actually manage it as an organization. And it helps really sort of, I suppose in simple terms, it gives businesses the ability to maintain an effective privacy information management policy and procedures, and to reduce the risks from damage to the business, to the reputation, confidence in stakeholders, etc., around privacy risks. And it's as simple as that. And it's a really good standard to sit alongside 27001. They can be implemented simultaneously, or if you've already got ISO 27001, this can be added onto it to boost the protection of personal identifiable information. And again, lots of benefits associated with it. Obviously, it's that building of trust in a similar way to ISO 27001. But it also provides transparency between your stakeholders. They know exactly how you are going to manage and look after PII information. What it also does is help employees within the organization understand what their roles and responsibilities are, and also the business as a whole around protection of personal identifiable information. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, it goes towards helping you and supports compliance with GDPR, and it's really about, I suppose, avoiding those breaches, avoiding that loss of data and those potential fines that I mentioned earlier around British Airways, Equifax, etc., and the loss of reputation, damage to brand, etc., the remediation costs of actually fixing the problems of losing personal identifiable information or exposing personal identifiable information as well. But what you don't want to see ISO 27001 and 27701 as a cost. It really is an investment. And CCS have recently invested ourselves in becoming ISO 9001 certified. And we saw that as an investment in our business. But investing in ISO 27001 and ISO 27701 should also be seen as investment for you as well. You know, it's an investment in your company, you know, protect your information and data and privacy, your customers and any other interested parties. It protects against potential fines, loss of reputation, damage to you as a business, but also helps you, as I said earlier, meet those governance and compliance for things like GDPR. But more importantly, it will protect your brand and your reputation. It's also an investment in your employees, to protect and safeguard them, as well as enabling them to have a real clear understanding of what their roles and responsibilities are where information, data and privacy is concerned. But it's also an investment in your customers. I suppose in simple terms, is to demonstrate that you're a reliable organization that looks after their information and data and privacy and security as a matter of fact. But it also will help exceed service level agreements and assure customers that they're working with a information data privacy focused supplier. But also it's an investment in your future, to ensure that your business can continue to operate in a secure manner and prove your information data security as well as your privacy credentials to a global market. It also help you to grow, and as you grow as a business, to make sure that you're thinking around information and data security and privacy, and you can grow and develop in a controlled way. So that's CCS, as you might have read that slide. That's why we invested, slightly different reasons why we invested in ISO 9001, but the same thing, an investment in our customers, our business partners and suppliers that we work with, our company as a whole, but also our future as a business, and to make sure that we can grow in a controlled way and prove our credentials to a global market, because ISO standards are a global standard. But, sort of why now though? I suppose I've covered a lot of these anyway, but it's really about, I suppose, enhancing your brand and your reputation. That it's based not on that you've never had a breach, that you've never had some form of GDPR violation, or you've never lost data or anything like that in the past, but it's basing it on your current performance, not past history. Obviously, there is cost savings to be had around this implementing of ISO standards and investing in the ISO standards. And it's about reduction in incidents, reduction in potential data loss, fines, etc., etc. I've probably already covered. And then meeting those compliance regulations around GDPR. But it might not just be around, standards like GDPR for data protection, etc. It could be contractual compliance with some of your customers that are starting to ask. Now, I'm working with a lot of organizations at the moment, helping them implement ISO 27001 and 27701, where they've been mandated by their customers that they must have a recognized international framework in place, like ISO 27001 and 27701, etc. And they're now being told you must have this if you're going to trade with us. And we're starting to see that more and more now, where businesses are moving away from that questionnaire-based approach of, do you have an information security policy for looking after any data I send you? And businesses will respond yes, and write down some form of text around it. Now businesses are going, do you have ISO 27001 for looking after information and data? And then maybe a next subheading of, do you have ISO 27701? Are you protecting the privacy of the information and the PII that we may share with you as an organization or that you hold around us? And again, it's about providing assurances, not only to your stakeholders, your employees, but also to the market as a whole, to present yourself as an organization that looks after information and data and privacy as a matter of fact, and that you can always do that. And obviously we've spoken around the sort of financial implications of why doing it now, potential penalties, but that huge potential remediation cost, sending out remediation letters, IT staff coming in, hiring external consultants to do forensic analysis of why you've actually been breached or what the internal process and procedures have actually failed. Were staff not properly informed of what the processes were for how they should handle data, etc.? But once you have a framework like the two ISOs that I've spoken around, everyone will know what their business is and how they should actually manage the information and data security. So how can we help you on this journey into getting better information data privacy protection for you as an organization? Now, we provide consultancy services around ISO standards to help businesses get certified for ISO, simple as that. The way we operate is we do fixed fee. And the reason we do that is we don't like the Oliver Twist approach of going, please sir, may I have some more money, you're a far more complex business than we thought, or it's going to take a lot longer because your processes are really difficult to map into the framework. No, we will give you a fixed fee pricing regardless of how complex you are as a business or how long it takes you to actually become ISO certified. We're not here to tell you how to run your business, how to manage it. We're just here to implement the best practices around information data and privacy security, but we're there to fit around your business. All of our consultants are IRCA qualified lead auditors, which is the International Register of Certified Auditors, and we give you a guaranteed consultant throughout the entire project to help maintain that continuity of working with you as an organization. And what we simply do is we build a framework for you around the ISO standards, either privacy or information and data security, to build that framework for you. But we do the full implementation. What we don't do is point you at a lot of frequently asked questions and get you to do all the work. Our job is to do the heavy lifting for you and ensure your journey is as trouble-free as possible. And so that's simply how we help businesses gain ISO certification. And we have a very simple 5-step process to enable you to become ISO certified in the required standards. First off, we kick off with a gap analysis. We look at the framework, the 114 different controls in 14 different areas if it's ISO 27001, and we look at what your business does in each one of those areas, and we do a gap analysis. Where are the gaps within that? Now, we work with a variety of different businesses, literally from Soho, 1- and 2-man band organizations, right up to multinational corporations. And businesses are at a different state of how they manage or how they have documented and what processes and procedures they've already implemented for information and data security. Some organizations might have a very strict process that's already documented, and the gap analysis will be looking for the gaps within that where they may be not thought of or not addressed. Other smaller businesses that we work with have practically nothing written down at all. Most of it is in people's heads or written down on the back of a fag packet, that old expression. And so what we do as a business is our consultant will look at where you are in your life cycle of looking after it in terms of process development and procedures, etc., and do a gap analysis against the standard to see how you fit as a business. What we do then is go away and develop the documentation to enable you to build a framework around ISO, taking your existing processes and procedures and building them into the framework. If you don't have a process or procedure for a particular element for one of the 114 different controls, we can suggest ones that you can potentially work with and help you develop those to meet your business needs. That process typically takes, and this is dependent upon size of organization, etc., but again, and also complexity of the organization, but as we're fixed fee, we work at your pace. Typically about 3 to 4 months later, we come back. There will be some to-ing and fro-ing with information with you as an organization between that sort of gap analysis and coming back and presenting you with the documentation. And that is really to make sure that the management system that we will develop for you and with you meets your needs now, 3-4 months later after we started the process, because something could have changed within the organization. Something could have a new customer come on board with new privacy controls or new guidance for information and data security, and we want to make sure it meets the needs of your business now and that you can do it. The next stage for you as an organization is to adopt that standard and to evidence the fact you are working towards the ISO either 27001 or 27701. Now, adoption of a standard can take anywhere. I'm just thinking of an insurance company we helped get ISO 27001. Their adoption process took around 2 weeks because they'd well-established, had a lot of processes and procedures already in place. Just letting somebody back in. A lot of processes and procedures in place, and for them to evidence the fact they were working to the standard took a very short period of time. It was only 2 weeks. Other organizations, it might take 3 months or 6 months, where they didn't really have any policies and procedures in place, and they've now got to roll that out across the business, you know, train the staff, etc. And this is our new policy for looking after personal identifiable information, or this is how we handle electronic data that comes into us from suppliers or customers. Once you've got that stage out of the way, you then go for certification. Now, we can help you with a variety of different certification models. There are independent certification. That's who I got certified with. Again, IRCA qualified lead auditors came in, assessed our business and said we met the required standards for ISO 9001, and I used QAS International for that. But we can also work for UCAS certification bodies. So we work with people like Lloyd's of London, BSI, AAC, URS, lots and lots of different certification companies. All the work that our consultants will do will meet both independent and UCAS accredited certification bodies. If you want an international standard, we also work with IAS, and which is the governing body who are sort of, so in simple terms, sit on top of UCAS. UCAS are underneath them, and then you have the independents like QAS. So we can work with them as well. So it doesn't matter which certification body you actually want to go with. All the work our consultants will do will meet the requirements of that, because we don't do a different job for independent or a more complex job for UCAS. We provide the same level of service and standard that will meet any of them. And then your certificate's issued. It's as simple as that. Now, we do also provide hosts of other ISO services that wrap around that. Obviously, lots of additional other ISO standards, such as quality, which obviously we have as a business, environmental, health and safety, medical devices, information, IT service management, energy management. There's lots and lots of different ISOs, but the link on there will actually take you to the variety of different ISO standards that we can actually support organizations in getting. We also can provide training. Now, that training, part of our implementation process, we will give instructions to internal auditors within your organization for them to manage and keep the system up to date, ready for your next annual audit, which will be going, you do them every year to make sure that you're still meeting the required standards. And we can provide additional or internal auditor training if you want it. Some organizations don't have the required numbers of staff to actually manage a large complex. If they're a large organization, they might want additional support around a managed service contract, where we can come in and do things like an internal audit, pre-audits, do a complete management review of your system every year, quarterly, monthly, and then do system analysis to help you support them. You may have existing management systems that you might want to consolidate to reduce the amount of audit times required or audit effort on your part. Some of the times if UCAS are mandated anyway, but to help you integrate the management systems in the same way as if you had ISO 27001 and you're interested in ISO 27701 for privacy, we can integrate that into the same management system so that you've only got one management system to review and manage. Or you might have a separate 9 and a separate 14001, and you want to integrate them, and we can help with that. We're also helping quite a few organizations move certification body. You might be with an independent one like QAS or one of the other independent ones, and you might need to go to UCAS certification because maybe one of your top customers has mandated it, that you must be UCAS certified. It might be a government agency, for instance, and we can help you on that journey as well. Or it might be your UCAS, but have never really understood the differences between UCAS and independent. You might want to go to independent because nobody's ever asked you for UCAS. And you might want to look at trying to reduce the costs of what your certifications are each year. And again, we can help you along that as well. So we're coming up to the 45-minute mark, so it would only take about that long. I suppose just a summary, ISO 27001 and ISO 27701 will give you value regardless of the size of your business. Like I say, we worked with organizations with 7,000 employees, 10,000 employees, and I'm just helping another small 5-man organization that provides IT security services to help them get ISO 27001. So it doesn't matter about the size of your organization or how big you are, we can help you to do that. And it's about protecting the information. And then I always say, you know, shout about it from the rooftops, put it on your website, let all your customers know, let all your suppliers know, because they will see you then as a business that is looking after the information, data and privacy for them and for their customers as well. You know, your stakeholders, whether they're employees, customers or anything like that, will have high expectations of you for looking after information, data and privacy. You know, exceed those expectations, have the right process, procedures, policies in place that can be implemented and that you can gain value from for doing it. And often, you know, when things go wrong, when breaches happen, when data is lost, when there are GDPR fines, it often means that just standards aren't present, that people don't know what the processes are, how they actually should manage the information and data, how you should access it, how you should maintain the integrity of it. Excuse me. So next steps, I've only put 3 down. You know, we can provide further information. There's plenty of information on our website, ccsrisk.com, around the ISO and how we can support you on the journey into getting ISO 27 or 27 or any of the other ISO standards. We can do a one-on-one benefits review where we'll sit down with you, we'll go through some of the elements of the standards and see how it is relative to your business and what benefit you can actually gain from it. Or if you want to know what the fixed price investment proposal is, there's a link at the bottom, ccsrisk.com/quotation, and you just fill in a few minor details, numbers of employees, how many sites you want to do, etc., whether you want UCAS or independent certification, and we can get back to you incredibly quickly with a fixed price investment cost. And like I said before, that is regardless of how complex you are as a business or how long it takes to implement. It is always a fixed fee proposal from CCS. And that's it really. I'd just like to thank everyone that's attended and have a quick look now just to see if there are any, bear with me 1 second, if there are any questions. Doesn't seem to be. Activating the right chat window up. No, obviously, if there are any questions, if you could please pop them into the chat window, or if you don't want to ask them in this sort of open forum, if you want to just send it to me directly, my email address is steves@ccsrisk.com. Obviously, I will follow up after this with an email to everyone, and I will also include a link to the recording as well. So that should be on our website later on this afternoon. You know, please feel free to share that with any colleagues or anyone within your network. And if there are no further questions, I'll draw this to an end. But I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining us here. And if you do want more information on it, you know, feel free to reach out to me directly or go onto our website, and there are plenty of, you know, request further information links on there to enable you to request whatever additional information you need from us. So once again, I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining us and hope you have a great rest of the day. Oh, is this a question coming in? Oh no, somebody just saying thanks. Thanks to you as well, and thank you very much and goodbye.